In a now-deleted Twitter space celebrating the future prospects of Kagurabachi and what would come with Part 2, I made a diligent mention of one Kazane Machi, his role in the story, what he brings to the table, and the timeless Chekhov's gun that is the Kaichi demon monster. It goes without saying, but much was shared regarding Hyuki's importance and the origin of the flame bone as well. The Seitei War video thoroughly reiterated my love for the dynamic between Ichiki, Kansen, and Yatsuru, and I voiced strong excitement at seeing Kuro, Izaru, Azami, and the rest in their youth. Safe to say, this chapter almost gave me a heart attack. Kaichi! Oh my god, they mentioned Kaichi. Kagarige! The fucking Kagari mentioned right after Kaichi. Oh shit, Ichiki. Oh hell yeah. Okay, let's go. Oh wait, there's Kansen as well. Oh my god, look at baby Izaru. Holy shit. There he is, baby boy Azami.
And says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds,"
declared J. Robert Oppenheimer, borrowing from Hindu scripture. This was said after witnessing the remarkable yet alarming success of the Trinity test, a trial of the Manhattan Project that would come to be known as the origin of the nuclear bomb. And it all began here, with the top secret government reports. By analyzing the legally published documentation of the actual Manhattan Project, you can already see cries of help and foreboding danger, which hint directly to what we know to happen in Kagurabachi as well. The parallels have always been there, they have never been clearer than this. But I've already had my fair share of serious talks with the Shiba episode, so let's take a breather to appreciate Hokuzono's ability to take things slow. Over 6 pages of dialogue between Kunishige and Subaru. What is that expression? With 3 more pages given with Kunishige and Shiba, which will undoubtedly follow into the coming chapters as well. See, I realized something while Kagurabachi was on sudden break, which is that part 1 is cutthroat in its pacing, because it has to be. There's no time to waste, there's no space to breathe. The Hishaku are on the move, the blade bearers are constantly under life-threatening danger, and once everything seems to go their way, Akemura Soga steps into the picture and breaks everything apart. But now that we're in an arc in the past where danger looms but isn't immediate, suddenly the Hiroshima conflict becomes the longest single battle in the series, and to nobody's surprise, you get character building, moments of quiet, and as the chapter title says, initiation. Subaru will become one of the enchanted blade wielders. Initiating his bond, trust, and chemistry with Kunishige is critical. Hokuzono has made it quite apparent that everything must always conclude on a blood-pumping cliffhanger to keep the reader engaged and avoid losing interest. But with chapters like these, it's starting to feel like he's willing to take those chances. Slow things down for the sake of world building and clarity. Yet even then, the author lulls you into a false sense of joy and bliss, only to drop a memorial. Oh my god. This is so sad. Carried their dead bodies? He has trauma for a lifetime. And one of the most despair-inducing Kunishige panels yet. Whoa. The back of a big man with big ambitions. So far, we've seen a good variety of healing mechanics in Kagurabachi that can be compared in contrast. And something that immediately strikes me is how novice and simplistic the Sorcery Bureau's healing really is. I made great mention in my chapter 60 review that Hakure is, in Azami's words, given great treatment by the Kaminabi resources, which then makes you think, why didn't they have those back then? One way to justify it is their lack of direct funding. However, when you look around at the introduced executives, the one everyone assumes to be in charge of medicine does not appear to be present. Of course, I'm talking about Yatsuru. If she is in fact the cause for the incredible power spike in recovery and healing, she would become one of their greatest assets, especially during times of war, securing her the third most important spot on the pecking order. There are numerous potentially dark connotations to be had, with Chiaki being pursued as a future carrier of a Mikaboshi child. Oh no. That does not forebode well. But for the sake of sanity, let's stick to the PG ones. Arranged political marriages are by all means a power maneuver. Just like how Chiaki's mother wants her to marry into an esteemed family to keep up the facade of influence and legacy, this too is the Mikaboshi's attempt at upholding tradition. Nonetheless, it is clear that the Soga and Mikaboshi are two distinctly different clans. Mixing with one another can thus also be seen as a form of defiling purity, something the Soga values much more than the other. And because they are after revenge, to enact the same hurt that was inflicted upon them by wiping out all of the present Soga, yet fostering a child, you're essentially performing a soft reset. You can completely rewrite the history of the Soga altogether and control the image they are henceforth given. We're told that the prophetic powers only lie dormant in legitimate lineage's eldest daughters, and the narrative clearly states that Chiaki, by all means, is not a legitimate descendant. I find it difficult to believe this baby-bearing plot will ever reach the finish line, considering the series makes a great deal out of Chihiro being born at the end of the war, almost as if some mark of divine, and adding another fetus to that would just muddy the picture. But in case it does, the Mikaboshi are operating under a false perception that Chiaki is able to provide something she physically, biologically, genetically cannot. And as for Akamura, the Seitei War is just a boiling pot of reasons for why he went through with the malediction. Revenge for his fallen Soga comrades was only the tip of the iceberg. While he sees inherent value in his Soga identity and under threats of ethnocide would do the exact same to prevent it, he's a Chiaki first type of guy, forever and always. The Mikaboshi have made clear that if something isn't given to them, they take it by force. That goes for land and the demand of the princess as well. While the reasons will certainly pile over time, in Akamura's mind, taking Chiaki, his reason for living, away from him would already be more than plenty to make him snap. Kagurabachi is a sucker for setup, and my oh my does this arc have the setup. More than just building on foundations previously unknown like the Irishima conflict, it also capitalizes heavily on how well the reader has immersed themselves in the series. The Masumi are first presented as an elite clan that almost went extinct during the Seitei War, and here we see faces we already know are going to die. However, due to continuity, they will all be tied in some manner to the current roster of Masumi we've come to know and love. Most of the Sorcery Bureau leaders are also complete nobodies, ensuring their death, but that's alright, because Kudo, the Eye Patch Kaminabi, and even this guy need to take their spot as leaders. To reiterate, the Seitei War is as much about loss as it is gaining reputation, making a name for yourself. It's also amazing to see discussion and ramification be had amongst the top brass and to not have Kasen speak a single word. Back then, his position wasn't anywhere near as influential. Ichiki takes both the familiar face lead and the loudest voice in the room, which is why he's shown as a sort of counterbalance to Kasen in the present. Someone you'd call equals, if you will. But explicit stuff aside, the chapter has maddening implications in the Japanese as well. When Azumi and Shiba speak of the war in chapter 9, they specifically describe the battlefield being a desolate wasteland, and here we get an almost clear-cut foreshadowing of how that would come to be. And by far, the most exciting name drop, well, you already know what it is. My god, they mentioned Haichin. This chapter is the first time in which Kunishige faces death. Seeing his sword in great condition with no wielder in sight gives off an image that Mashiro treasured Kunishige's craft more than he did his own life. Like previously stated, he's struggling to create a katana that can protect people, and yet again, he's at a dead end with a decaying corpse as his punishment. These are, without question, the seeds of doubt that begin to bloom inside Kunishige. He's He's a person tarnished by fear, responsibility, and falling in love with a craft that should not exist. And as you come to see him birth these enchanted blades, fueled by thought and the naive emotions of his time, the nature of their character start to make more and more sense. One of the first bits of characterization in the series is Kunishige's back. To be honest, Hokusono simply saw it as a cool visual metaphor for leaving behind Chihiro, walking out of the door. But as the series was confirmed to have avoided the axe with its immense popularity, he likely revisited this motif, using it again in chapter 24, once more in chapter 112, and now at its origin point with the looming question of what is the best katana in the world. It's a weighted question, and it obscures his face entirely. A question so important that it plagues his mind not just during the Seitei War, but long after it. After all, it's what his principles, accountability, and learning to do that together is founded upon. But that can only mean one thing. The perfect katana is still yet to be made. It wasn't anything he was able to create. That's to say, it is not something that murders, but it's not something that solely seeks to protect either. The Kuragumo is not his masterpiece. The Tobimune is not his masterpiece. The Kumeyuri, the Magatsumi is not his masterpiece. The Enten wasn't his masterpiece either. While the answer remains unanswered before his untimely death, I feel like the Seitei War will have the greatest of clues to this question that Chihiro will then finally be able to answer himself in his own way with his own blade.